Good morning, good afternoon or good evening, wherever you might be. As I teach Excel, I often say to my students that many people make the mistake of trying to develop their spreadsheets on the actual screen itself, on the computer itself. I've always found that the most efficient way is to develop a plan, write it out on paper, or as I've done here, at least type the concept of what you want to do on a worksheet, and I often call these things the scene. What do I want to do? First of all, I know that in this case the example we'll be using that Joe Citizen needs a housing loan and he needs to supply some income details, expenses, etc. He wants to use these figures, $400,000 over 25 years at 5.5% per annum, and he wants monthly repayments. The bank then needs to process his application. So the first thing we're going to do is to build a simple income and expense statement first to see how all of this links in together. And what we need to do is think about the functions and the maths that we require. So in the details of his income, we need to think about the sum function, the arithmetic situations, plus, minus, multiply, as we'll see, and then the bank setting up their particular worksheet to calculate need to use these four functions. The absolute function, which simply removes the sign, as we'll see, of a number, makes a negative number look positive. The payment function, the if statement, and the and statement. We'll also see how the spreadsheets can link, and we'll use a little bit of conditional formatting. So first of all, let's look at Joe's position. So what we've done here, we've said that his salary is $8,000 per month. He has investment income of that, etc., etc. In this particular cell, we've used the sum function to add the cells above. The expenses, we've done the same thing. We've taken some typical expenses, and then we have used the sum function again to add up those cells. And then the gross income, we have said that we want to deduct what is in that cell, E18, from E8, that cell there, and then apply a tax rate. In this case we'll say 25% to his gross income, the total monthly income, and then the net income will be E20, that figure, minus that figure. He has also been employed for 3 years because the bank will want to know how long he's been employed so that they can make a judgment. So far we've seen that in the development of our spreadsheet we have taken into account the first requirement. Let's look at what the bank does. The net income, $1,535. How did we get that in there? We typed in an equal sign, and then we went back to Joe's position and we clicked on the cell with the net income, and because there was an equal sign, it said look in the sheet called Joe's position. The exclamation mark separates the cell reference from the sheet name. The bank will allow the rent, so the rent that he's paying at the moment is $2,000 per month here, but of course the bank say, well, if we approve the loan you won't need to pay the rent, we can allow for that, so your available funds for the loan repayment are that, and that is equal to those two cells added together. Now the bank have some loan requirements. First of all, the loan repayment must not exceed 75% of the available funds. Secondly, he must be employed for more than 2 years with the present employer. So the bank have something that looks like this. The rate per annum, 5.5%. Joe wants 25 years. He wants to borrow $400,000. No balloon payment. In other words, he wants to pay the entire loan off by the last payment. What are his monthly repayments? Well, the monthly repayments work on this formula here. The absolute function after the equal sign simply converts a negative number to a positive number. In other words, if I remove that particular function, then I'm shown a negative number. It's negative in the payment function because Excel needs to reduce the principal interest over the period of years. However, for appearance sake, we'll put in an absolute function, that one there, and I see that it simply removes the sign. While we're talking about these functions, remember that Excel always calculates the inside most function first. So it's calculating the payment first, and the payment is based on a formula that we can see here in the function arguments, the payment function, and if I cancel that, we're going to insert the function, and we'll say that the function is the payment, which is A11, the rate, divide by 12, because we have an annual rate here, we're dividing it by 12 to get a monthly rate. The term, 25 years in B11, must be multiplied by 12 to get months, so that we're comparing apples and apples. C11, the principal, and the 0 indicates that there is nothing hanging over at the end. So we have our function here, and now the big test: will Joe be approved? At this stage, yes, and the reason he is approved, up here in the function, in the formula, we start with an if statement, and we say if. The AND statement means that the two arguments involved in the AND statement must both be true for the answer to be yes. If one is not true, the answer will show as no. So if Joe's position in G4 is greater than 2, or what's Joe's position in G4? Yes, here it is here. He has been employed for more than 2 years. Incidentally, in the View tab, I turned off the headings, so for appearance sake, we'll put them back on. So there we are in G4. Now, the bank also say, in the bank cell E11, this one here, is that payment less than what's in G2 multiplied by 75%. Well, what's in G2? We'll scroll up, the available funds. If both of those are true, the answer is yes. If one is not true, the answer will be no. So let's say that Joe's term of employment was only 2 years. Let's see how that affects the formula. The bank now say, no, sorry, you can't be approved because you haven't been with your employer for more than 2 years. Okay, well, Joe says, not a problem, I have been employed for 3 years, so we put that back to 3. And now he will be approved because both of the conditions are true up here. Joe's position is greater than 2 for his terms employed. But what if he said, oh look, I'm improved, but I need more money. Can I borrow 500,000? The answer is no, because now his monthly repayment is greater than 75% of the available funds for the loan repayment. So he comes back to, oh well, I'll stick with the 400,000. And he is approved because that figure is now less than 75% of that figure. So that's how Joe would have his loan approved by the bank. And as you can see, the conditions of the scene were all covered. We had something to work on to develop our spreadsheet as we move through. Of course, Joe's worksheet would be on his computer, the bank's worksheet would be on their computer, so Joe can fill in what the bank needs for his position using whatever the bank have on their computer for his income statement. So hopefully you found this handy. The point of the exercise is that try not to develop your spreadsheets ad hoc, on the fly as it were. use some indication as what you need, and you'll find that your spreadsheets become much more easy to develop. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to comment. Any questions you might have, we'd be delighted to answer for you. And don't forget to subscribe. Bye for now. Good morning, good afternoon or good evening, wherever you might be. Last time we looked in our exercise of developing and planning a spreadsheet the situation for Joe Citizen who wanted a housing loan using those figures. There is a link to this video above if you wish to see it, and we saw that when he went to the bank said, okay, based on that rate, term, principal, we will lend you the money for that monthly repayment. And he was approved based on the formula that we see above. And again, that formula is explained in the previous video. But Joe, being a careful man, decided that he could only repay $2,200 a month and wants to know how much he can borrow based on that new monthly repayment. So we'll further develop our spreadsheet. And we see in the data tab in the data tools group there is a command called what if analysis, and the two commands we'll be using are the goal seek and the scenario manager. Let's use the goal seek first. So the goal seek works like this. We're going to set this cell here to a value of $2,200, and we're going to change this cell. So by changing this cell, we can quickly work out, or have Excel work out for us, how much the principal will reduce for the lesser monthly repayment at the same rate for the same term. So when we click OK, Excel says $2,200, you can borrow $358,255. If you want to retain those figures in the spreadsheet, you would click OK. To revert back to the original figures, we simply click Cancel. So that's how we can use Goal Seek. The Scenario Manager, Joe wants to see various scenarios and wants to be able to refer to them later without needing to recalculate every time. So in this case, we will use the Scenario Manager, and the Scenario Manager works like this. First of all, we add a name for the scenario and we'll call it term. He wants to go for 20 years and he wants to borrow an amount of, we'll say, $410,000. And to do that, we need to change that cell, and if I hold down the control key, it saves me from typing commas, and we're going to change that cell. And when I click OK, B11 becomes 20 and $410,000 becomes the amount. Let's click Add for another scenario, because this one, the term, he wants to see what 30 years would be, and the principal, he wants to see if he can borrow $450,000. The same cells I will retain from the previous, and then we click OK. We can change that now to 30 and the amount to $450,000, and we'll click OK. Now if I click Show for each of those, it will show me what the different scenarios are. So for that first one, 20 years, that principal, that's his monthly repayment. He will not be approved for that because he doesn't match the lending criteria here. Let's see how he goes on this one. We'll show. The answer is yes, because he is now within that criteria. And if I use the summary command here, I'll be given a new worksheet which will show me, by putting the result in E11, which is the monthly repayment. There we are there. So the current values are 30, 55, 450, and the original amount which we saw first up has now been replaced by these situations here. If I wanted to retain the original amount, then I would have used the scenario manager to enter in the original details, and I would have seen the original details in there. So that's how I developed the spreadsheet that little bit further, by enabling me to see what the repayments, how they were affected, by using the GoalSeek and the scenario manager. The beauty about the scenario manager, of course, is that we have a permanent record of any changes that might be made, so that we can always refer to them without having to recalculate as we would do in the GoalSeek. Thank you so much for watching. The next upload will involve some graphs that we'll use, but at this stage make sure that you can understand the what-if analysis, and particularly bear in mind that what we're doing is developing our spreadsheet along the way. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already done so, and thank you so much for watching. See you next time. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you might be. Welcome to the third in the series, Constructing and Planning an Excel Spreadsheet. In the previous two uploads, we saw that Joe Citizen's income and expenses worksheet had been constructed thus. But Joe, again being a careful man, knows that this is his January situation, but what he wants to do is to plan out to June. So what we're going to do is to autofill across to June by pointing at the autofill button in the bottom left hand corner of that cell and then simply dragging across. Excel automatically fills those cells with the months. It's been programmed to do that for us. Now what we're going to do is to select all of the data down here, because Joe is going to now use the autofill button down in the bottom right hand corner here, and he will drag across to June and the cells are automatically filled. Now, as I mentioned, he knows that they were the figures for January, but of course each month will vary a little bit from the other, so we'll just make one or two changes that Joe has said to us that these are the figures that will become involved in the next 5 months. So he knows, for example, that his salary in February will drop down to $7,800, and he knows that his April income will increase to $8,550, and he knows also that May and June will be $7,900 and $8,100 respectively. He says that his investments will only vary slightly. For example, the February investment will drop down to $78. The April investment, he will receive an extra, we'll say $10. That's $90. So we can see here that his monthly incomes are being varied because there are formulas in each of those cells which have been carried across when we auto-filled those cells. We'll say the rent will remain the same. The insurance will vary here in March because he takes out another policy to $230, and also because that has increased, he will need to autofill that 230 across like that. And commensurately, the figures at the bottom here also change with the changes in the contents of the cells. So he is saying that these are now projected income figures. So these are his projected figures for the next 5 months. Now we'll do a little bit of formatting at this stage just to make it look a little bit better. So we drag through the cells. I want to make the text red. We'll say bold. I want to see borders around each of the cells, and importantly I want to see totals for each of the categories. So what we're going to do is to click in this cell, and the way Excel works quite simply is this, that if I click the auto sum button, it looks up the column and it says, are there 2 or more cells that I can add? The answer is no, so it looks to the left. It has guessed correctly. I'll hit Control Enter, which keeps me in the same cell, and Joe now knows that his projected income for the 6 months is $48,000. Now all we need to do is to autofill that down, and that will take care of the formulas as we autofill down. So our spreadsheet is being constructed from the original plan, which started off with purely this column here. Now what we'll do, we'll just hold down the Control key, and we're going to get rid of the information in some of the cells there that we don't need. So the Control key lets me select non-adjacent cells, and if I press the Delete key and then click away, I see that those cells are blank. I might also like to do a little bit more formatting. We'll say surround that cell with the borders. We'll look also at formatting, so select those cells, hold down the Control key, select that cell, Control key still held down, select those cells, and now we can format them all at the one time. So we're going to fill the cells with a light grey, the colour blue, bold, and a light grey fill. And while we're there, we'll say all borders around these cells. So there is my spreadsheet, which has taken shape nicely. You may not like that blue, but for the sake of exercise. So no problem so far. Now what we're going to do, Joe wants to create a chart. A chart is simply a visual representation of the trend in data, and it works on the golden rule of all computing, that is select then do. So I'm going to drag through those cells, ensuring that I've included the title, hold down the Control key, drag through those cells, Control key still held down. I just want the net income down there as well. I could have included these other two, but I don't particularly want to for whatever reason. Now the beauty about inserting a chart is that if I press the F11 key, I'm given a chart on its own sheet down here, which can be renamed. If I like, right click, rename, we'll say Joe's chart for want of a better name. And here I see the varying displays visually, the total monthly income in blue, the monthly expenses there in an orangey colour, and the net income in grey. So Joe has an indication of what the trends are in his income, expenses, and his net income. If I go back to Joe's position, and let's say that there is a big increase in the rent for April, for example. For whatever reason, his rent has been increased to $3,000 for that particular month. The other months remain the same. It could be there are repairs or whatever to be done. So now when I go back to Joe's position, to Joe's chart, I see that the chart has automatically updated. So now in our planning and developing the spreadsheet, we've taken it a good step further than what the original view was. It's now a projected situation with a chart, and the next time that we come back for the development number 4, we'll look at a macro to have some things done automatically for us. So thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe unless you've already done so, and we will see you next time. Bye for now. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you might be watching. Welcome to part 4 in the series Constructing and Developing an Excel Spreadsheet. This time we're going to look at a little bit of tweaking in our sheet tabs down the bottom here. And what first of all I'm going to do is to do a little bit of renaming. I'm going to call this one by right clicking and rename. I just want to say position. I know it's to do with Joe Citizen. This one we originally named it bank because we wanted to show how the bank calculated, but I'm going to rename this and just call it calculations because we'll assume that Joe knows how to use the formulas now. Calculation. Scenario summary we can leave the same. This sheet that had the chart in it, what I'm going to do is to copy that chart by clicking on the chart and then right click and copy, because what I want to do is to put the chart in the position sheet. So here I will right click and paste using the destination theme, but I'm going to resize the chart so it fits more evenly on the page. I'll just scroll across there, we'll drag it up to the top. In fact, what we might want to do is to change the view percentage here, view, zoom, and we're going to make the percentage 75% so that we see the information more easily. So now I will simply resize that and I'll put the chart just below there. So everything sort of fits viewably on the one page. In fact, what I'll do here, when we scroll across we see it more evenly there, so I'll drag that to there, resize it again, so I'm just tweaking things as to how I want them to appear nice and neatly on the page. Now importantly, we'll save the changes as we go, so no problem there. Now what I'm going to do is to delete the chart sheet, because I have the chart now where I want it on the position sheet. Sheet 1 is a sheet that I have created by clicking the Insert Worksheet button. Here I'm using Excel 2010 because what I wanted to do was to show you how to create a menu system, so that the menu, which we will now rename this sheet to menu, and I'm going to drag that menu sheet across to the very start, so it's the first sheet that appears when I open the file. And I did that by holding down the left mouse button and watching the little black triangle as I dragged and dropped it where I wanted it to be. Now what I can do is to click on the menu items, and when I right click I'll insert a hyperlink to a place in this document, and the place in this document will be the position tab for the first one. The second one, the loan calculations, I want a hyperlink to calculation. Click OK. And the scenarios, I'll right click, hyperlink to the scenario summary. OK. Now I'll save the changes and we'll see what happens. Let's say I wanted to see the loan calculation sheet. I simply need to click and I'm taken straight to it. So no problem there at all. Now what I'm going to do is a little bit of thinking outside the square, because I want to go back to the menu, but I don't want to have to click down here on the worksheet button, although I could of course. So what I'm going to do is to insert a row so that A1 becomes available, and I'm going to call this menu. And what I want to do now, Control Enter keeps me in that cell, I want to right click and insert a hyperlink to go to the menu. Okay, and now let's see what happens. There I'm taken back to the menu. So I'll do the same on the other sheets. Let's go to the position sheet, and in A1, of course it could be in any particular cell, but we're making it A1 in each of the sheets for simplicity's sake, and a hyperlink. Go to the menu, OK, test it, beautiful, and finally the scenarios. We'll go to the scenario sheet. In an A1 we will type menu, Control Enter keeps me in that cell, right click, hyperlink to the menu, OK. Let's go back and now we'll test them. Position, beautiful, menu, no problem. Loan calculation, menu, scenarios, menu. Now the reason that I've done that is that in many large files, in companies etc., there can be many worksheets, and the problem is that very often we cannot see the worksheet immediately. With a menu system it makes life a lot easier, hopefully, as you've seen. We only have 3 or 4 worksheets here in this particular file, but you've seen the procedure, and it is quite simple to create a hyperlink to a particular worksheet, and it makes the navigating of your file, as I say, so much easier. So thank you again for watching. This was part 4 in the series, and we're now developing our spreadsheet nicely, and when we come back next time we're going to look at how I can format the chart that we had here in the position. So I'll go to the position and we're going to format the chart here. Just to give you a little taste, I don't like the blue, so I'm going to right click on it and format that particular data series with a fill color of we'll say let's say red for the sake of the exercise, and that is how I'll show you to change and format the particular chart. At the moment there's no title. We'll look at what happens when I click there, etc. So thank you again for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now. Good morning, good afternoon or good evening, wherever you might be. Welcome to part 5 in the series, Planning and Developing an Excel Spreadsheet. This time we're going to look at formatting the chart, and we'll be using some of the more advanced features in that formatting. First of all, I'm going to make sure that I've clicked in the chart, which enables me to see the chart tools up here in the ribbon. And when I drag the chart, and I'm going to resize it a little bit by using the double-headed arrow in the corner, I can see a little more of what I'm doing. We're going to use the layout tab here in the chart tool. So when I click the layout tab, I'm shown particularly the labels area which we're going to be using, and the first thing I'm going to do is to look at a chart title. So we'll say I want the chart title to be above the chart. There are other options, but this is the most popular, above the chart, and it is that one there. So the chart title we're going to say is Joe's position, and when I press Control Enter, that accepts that particular edit. And now I don't like the red particularly, so I'm going to look in the design area here where I see that there are quite a number of designs. I can click the drop arrow here. The fancy ones are down the bottom here. We'll look at this one, style 47, quite nice. We'll check another one just for old time's sake. and we'll look at this one here. Don't particularly like that one, so we'll go back to where we were, which was, as I recall, this one around about here. That'll do me. Now, I'm going to click the Layout tab, and I'm going to say that I want to put some axis titles on this left-hand axis. So the vertical axis, the primary vertical axis, I want to have a vertical title, and that vertical title will be monthly income, because that's exactly what it is, monthly income. And when I press enter, there I see the monthly income text is shown to me. I can resize that. Okay, so that's how I can insert a vertical axis title. I already have the horizontal axis titles down here with the legend as to what they are. Now the next thing we'll do up here is to look at the legend itself. The legend is this area down here. So the legend, I can turn it off if I wish, or show it at the right, at the top, at the left. In this case we'll show it at the bottom again, down there where we were. The data labels. If I click the drop arrow, I have again a number of options here, and I'm going to say outside end. It displays the data labels and positions outside the end of the data point, so they'll appear up across the top here. So that can be handy where you have a fairly large axis here, so it's always nice to be able to see the numbers if you wish. If you don't want them, then it's quite a simple matter to turn them off. That's entirely up to you. I like to have them on the charts. The axes we looked at here, the primary vertical axis, my apologies, the primary horizontal axis, this one here. I can show the left to right axis or an axis without labelling there. Not a good idea. I don't know what the months are, so we'll put those back on, and of course I can put them back simply by clicking that particular command. The grid lines, the horizontal grid lines, I can see the minor grid lines as well. If I do that, makes it look a bit messy, so I can turn them off. So the horizontal grid lines, I just want the major grid lines. You can play about with the other options, of course. The plot area, when I have colour in the plot area, it's white by default, then I can clear the plot area fill should I wish. The shapes, what we can do in our charts, and this can be very, very handy. I want to perhaps put a shape pointing to this particular series here. So what I'm going to do is to simply draw an arrow, and I'll draw the arrow and point towards that one there. Click away to see it, and I'm going to say insert a text box, and I'll say here extra income for the sake of the exercise. And when I click away and make the box a little bit bigger to see it all, there we go there. So that's how I can do that. I can even lengthen that arrow should I wish by simply selecting and resizing. So there is some methods of formatting your charts. There's a very quick way if you don't like the colours of the series that I showed you in the previous upload. You can right click there, format the data series, and also fill colour of a solid fill. Let's choose something like that colour there, green will do. for the sake again of the exercise. So with the chart selected, in the Layout tab there is a command called Data Table. This is extraordinarily handy because what it enables me to do is to show the data table below the chart. That is this information here. So if I click on there it shows me the data table. That is extremely handy. That's how I can format my charts. They're the main formatting procedures that we use. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already done so, and we will see you next time. Bye for now.